Thanks for listening to Average Joe's Drive-In. If you'd like to talk movies or contact the show, add our social media pages. You can add us on Facebook at Average Joe's Drive-In Podcast, on Twitter at TWJ Author, on Instagram at Thomas Washburn Jr. You can also hit up www.thomaswashburnjr.com for more information about the show and related links. If you'd like to support the show, you can buy TJ's books on Amazon. Just type in Thomas Washburn Jr. in the search. Books are available in Kindle and paperback formats. If you have Kindle Unlimited or Prime, you can read the books for free and money will be earned by the pages read. It doesn't cost you anything and it supports the show. Until next time, you've been listening to Average Joe's Drive-In.
Sandwiches, ice cream, coffee and snacks, and many other pleasing treats. Our foods are fresh and tasty, our drinks satisfying and refreshing. They're so good.
Welcome to Average Joe's Drive-In.
And now, on with the show.
Hey everybody, welcome to Average Joe's Drive-In, episode number 64. I am your host, TJ Washburn, and with me is the always amazing, always wonderful, super talented Jeremy Flagg. How are you doing, sir?
I'm going to have to try and live up to that kind of intro.
Hey, I got to build it up. I can't go in all, down and not hype. You got to get the hype behind it because you have all kinds of cool things going on right now, which we are going to talk about. So how have you been since the last time we spoke?
Life has been busy since we last spoke. It seems as fast as I can get a project off my plate, we're going to replace it with two more. So it has been going steady nonstop for quite some time now.
That's okay. To me, that's a good thing though. I would rather have the creative, it's a good and bad thing, I guess. One, it can kind of get overwhelming, but that means you're doing something right if you've got a lot of stuff on your plate because, you're in demand or you're getting projects done that you need to be. You could be the opposite of like me and have like 8 half unfinished, not edited projects sitting on the table that I just haven't quite finished up yet.
I promise you, there's a lot of I'll get to it someday projects right now that by whatever strange, either this one's not going to make me any money or I don't think that this is quite right for fans or I have no clue what I'm doing with this. That pile grows every single day.
I have a giant folder of half started stuff like that, but I've got a lot of shorts finished right now that I've done my first drafts or, a first edit, but I haven't finished them yet. So I've got or stuff that I got feedback on that I need to, rework and add some things to. And so I'm hoping if all goes well, I will have a new short story collection out in the fall, and it's mostly going to be sci-fi and fantasy with a few kind of horror-ish type things thrown in, but a little different.
You're branching out.
Yeah, branching out, trying to get. I grew up as almost as big, if not more, of a fantasy and sci-fi fan than horror when I was younger.
Were you part of that Dragonlance crew?
I never played Dragonlance, but I read a lot of the books, but the Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman books especially. But
I never Coburn, Andy Coburn.
One of my very good friends.
Gave me all his Dragonlance books, and I read them all. And to this day, I'm not entirely sure what I read, but I read them all.
Me either. I read like the Dragons of Summer Flame and all of those books, and I was very big into especially the R.A. Salvatore stuff. He's still to this day one of my favorite authors.
He lives like down the street from me, right?
I hate you.
So fun, interesting, quick segue. So we're doing this anthology for the New England Speculative Writers, and it's going great. There's a whole bunch of awesome people in it. And the person I want to anchor the book is R.A. Salvatore. And because I live so close and I just happen to know of him through other people, like, I know, like, really weird little facts about him, like where his family plays softball and that he's a trustee of the local library. So
this sounds very stalkerish, Jeremy.
Yeah, so I have the information to be super stalkery, and I have to remind myself, like, no, business professional, you're not going to show up on someone's doorstep. You're going to send them a polite email. But it burns me, like, he's literally miles away from me, and like, you know, everyone does it to Stephen King. They go stand on his front the walkway in front of his house, and they just stare longingly at the house.
I'll go there, toss books over the fence, and be like, please pick one of these up and read it. You know?
But I don't know, like, I don't know him personally, and I haven't seen him out and about doing the circuit, because he does, like, these huge events that I'm not quite ready for. But,
well, you know, like San Diego Comic-Con, New York Comic-Con.
Yeah, he's like, oh, I have to turn this one down because my busy schedule. And I'm thinking, I would saw off my left leg to go to this. So,
yeah.
But yeah, we have an email out to him that's very politely asking if he would be interested in writing a foreword or even participating with a story. You'll hear me squeal from 600 miles if I ever get that email.
You know, that's going to just, unfortunately, you know, and this is a good segue into this part, because I want to talk a little bit about the, you know, the selection process and how you went about doing this. Now, to show that they didn't play favoritism, now I've known Jeremy for a while. We're friends. We, you know, have done stuff like this. I didn't make it into the anthology.
Stab me in the chest.
Which is fine. Hey, I understand it. You know, business is business. But I was like, if you get him to do it, that's gonna kill me personally, just because, you know. But that's neither here nor there. I'm not trying to make you feel bad. I'm just saying. So
I'm feeling
you can't really say that they showed favoritism towards certain people, you know, because of ties or whatever. So I think it was very cool and very democratic and you really have a good swath of different authors in that, which is very cool.
So the New England Speculative Writers, we got together. There's really not much for fantasy and sci-fi in the Northeast. And yeah, there's the New England Science Fiction Association, but they're not strictly writing. They look at it from a much bigger genre. And so we kind of wanted to build a smaller kind of niche community for it. And when we got together, we're like, what the heck are we going to do? And one of the things we wanted to do was do an anthology, partly to help fund the organization, but at the same time to give voice to authors that sometimes don't have voices. So, Christina Alden, C.L. Alden, and I, sat down, and over drinks, we came up with this idea. Like, we studied the market. Like, we spent hours just looking at what would be feasible. And ultimately we came up with this, or I can't take credit. She came up with the idea of the final summons. And we just liked the dire tone that it instantly elicited. And both of us really like dark sci-fi. And so it kind of played to something we know a little bit more about. And so, we announced that we were going to do it, at one of the meetings, and said, hey, you know, we're really interested in doing this, and this is what we're looking for. And we had someone submit a story within 6 minutes. We did not expect that. We wound up having over 200,000 words submitted, which
that's a lot.
It's a lot of reading. We did not realize what we were getting ourselves into.
Well, you figure what the average was probably between about 4,000 and 7,000 words was what you were shooting for. What, 7,000 max, right around there?
Yeah, 7,000 max, and we had multiple people come in way over 7,000. Multiple.
those pesky directions.
So, and so we asked a third person because we knew we were going to butt heads. Like her and I, the reason we work well together is because we don't agree on anything. We complement each other very well in the fact that we always respectfully disagree, but more often than not, we do disagree on stuff. And, so we've been, in a writing group for like 5-6 years now. And so we invited a former English teacher, C.H. Duryea, to be the third person in this curating team. And he came to it with a very different mentality. He's older than me, so his interest in sci-fi goes back further, and he understands pulp sci-fi far better than I do. And so we had very different perspectives, and very different backgrounds, and that was kind of what complemented. And when we started getting together, we would talk about some of the works, and some of them we spent hours arguing, talking about the good, the bad. And one of the things that we decided very early on is every rejection and every acceptance, we were going to give feedback, whether people wanted it or not, we were going to provide it. And something really weird happened, and we didn't foresee this. People who were being rejected were responding to our rejections very positively, saying, yeah, I kind of I agree with you. I was worried about that. So what we found is, we got really good feedback from people who were being rejected. And the whole point of this organization, ultimately, we want it to be a supportive community that, no matter what level of writer or author you are, we want to push you to go to the next level, whatever that is for you. And so we got a lot of really great feedback, and already I've heard several authors are taking their short stories where our comments were, this isn't a short story, it's the first chapter of an epic fantasy, and they've turned it into much larger stories. And if I remember correctly, I think that's exactly what we told you.
That was one of the things, yes, that this story felt like it should be a lot bigger. It wasn't made for a 4,000 some odd word story
And that's one of the things that, we learned, like, I've only written a handful of short stories that have been in anthology. I'm not going to say I'm an expert at any stretch. And I've had awesome editors. Scott Goudsword and David Price have done awesome things helping me out learning that craft.
Oh yeah. David is a great editor. I had a chance when I worked with him on, when he edited the story that was in the Northern Frights anthology that we were both in. He's really good about feedback and giving pointers and where you can improve and making suggestions.
And he was kind of the inspiration for this, in the fact that, he always gave some sort of feedback, and he was always really nervous about giving it, because I think, we're a moody bunch, and he was always worried about offending. And I was like, yeah, you can't offend me. Like, this is a creative business. Like, people hate what we do, or they love what we do. And so I learned very quickly as the editor, that's a way more terrifying thing. And so I sent out, like, these letters some of my responses were, 4,000 or 5,000 words. I was writing
a short stories
in response to short stories. But the great thing about that was, one, it perpetuated this idea that, it's a community, and I will never say I'm an expert on something because someone knows something better than me all the time. But when we started to do the Kickstarter, weirdly enough, a lot of the people who were rejected funded the Kickstarter. And that was never our intention to, make people feel like they owed us anything. But it was kind of nice to see that people still supported even after, and I've been rejected before. Like, it feels like a kick in the face.
Oh yeah, I'm on a streak. I am like 0 for 5 this year on anthology submissions.
You're doing better than me. I haven't submitted anything, so I've got nothing.
this is where the bulk of my stories will be coming from the from my next short story collection. And I have 2 or 3 stories that are that I never submitted because I really wasn't sure what to do with them type things. You know what I mean? I wrote them without anything in mind. One, for a matter of fact, I wrote it with an anthology in mind, and then I lost my bookmark with the anthology I was going to submit it for.
Oh.
Couldn't remember what it was, the name of it or anything, and couldn't find it anywhere. So now I just have this story kind of hanging around. It's really weird. It's kind of an odd story, so I don't think it's really going to fit into anything, you know. So I'm just going to put it in with my in my short story collection. It's kind of an old school, like, Twilighty Zone,
Okay.
Tales from the Dark Side type horror, sci-fi horror.
I think the short
Fly.
story thing it's a hot commodity right now. People, they don't have to spend a lot of money to get it. And if they don't like you, they're only invested in one story instead of an epic, 800-page novel. And on like page, 200, you're like, I hate everyone in this book. I think short stories are great for samplers to let people kind of see your range. And at the same time, I mean, let's just be honest, and short story writers will kill me for this. Writing a short story is easier as far as time goes, not the skill, but the time. I can bang out let's call it mediocre short story in an afternoon, to get it to wherever it needs to be, and people will help you, make it a good story, but to get that initial idea out. Whereas right now I'm currently on 120,000 words in my current novel. It's a doorstopper, and what's killing me is knowing that 30,000 words need to get chopped out of it. So my beta readers are yelling at me to cut stuff all over the place.
Yeah. But that's good that you have beta readers that aren't afraid to tell you to cut stuff, because, that's one thing with beta readers. They tend to either be friends or family. So sometimes they are not the best people to be asking constructive criticism from because they're afraid to give it to you. So, but on the other hand, now something like, and I've had people ask me and vice versa, asking other writers to be beta readers is a wonderful idea because they usually have a good perspective. But I find other writers are usually really busy doing their own stuff. So sometimes it takes them a lot longer to get back to you.
Not that I know anything about that or anything. Doing the anthology, I'm happy to be doing it, and it's exciting, and it's a new world that I really I'm getting to explore with the writers involved. And some of the writers are way more experienced at it, so I get to ask questions on the other end of it. But 189,000 words, I read a novel like every 6 months, and this was basically 2 epic fantasies dropped in my lap, and I had 30 days to do it. And it was every waking moment I spent reading, and when I wasn't reading, I was critiquing. And there was 3 of us doing it. So when you add up the man hours that went into just reading the slush, it was so, it was something that none of us had anticipated. And that's something that, moving forward, we came up with a better system for next time. But wow, I learned how slow a reader I am. It was literally every waking moment for 3 weeks. I know I have, as much as I hate to admit it, I don't read as much as I used to. It just, I don't feel like I have time to do it as much as I'd like, it comes down to between writing, doing the podcast, and 800 other things, work and regular life stuff. It's just like when I have a few minutes to sit down, I
if I do read something, it usually is a short story. And that's why I really like short story collections personally, because I can read like one story a night or whatever. I don't have to, or read a story, then a week later read another one. However, my schedule works out to be able to read. Whereas if I'm reading a novel, I always feel like I'm forgetting things trying to move forward if I'm taking large gaps in between my time,
And I know I'm going to get crucified for saying this, and when I hear the advice to be a better writer, you need to read more, I want to tell that person they can kiss my rosy red ass.
I kind of agree with you there too, a little bit to some extent. So
that's like telling a doctor to be a better doctor, you should go watch Grey's Anatomy. And don't get me wrong, I think that there's many, many reasons why you should be reading. Like, you should know what other popular authors are doing. You should see what the market is currently. But I don't look at it from a pleasure standpoint. It's a research standpoint. So even my pleasure reading, I'm kind of curious when Ari Salvatore releases a new book, which I'm currently reading. So his current book, Children of a Mad God, I'm listening to the audiobook. It's awesome. It's like the guy is reading it is so British, and I swear he's smoking a pipe in the background.
Is he wearing a crushed red velvet bathrobe as well?
Actually, I picture he's George R.R. Martin in front of a fireplace.
Yeah.
While I'm reading it, one of the main reasons I'm reading it is this is book 9 or 10 in this series, wow. But the series is broken up into, I think, 3 books, and 3 or 4 books. But this book takes place after all of those books, and one of the reasons that he wrote it, in one of his interviews, he said, I needed another entry point into my world, because at 10 books, not everyone wants to go read all other 9 books for a new novel. And so right. You don't need to actually have read, where I'm at right now at least, you don't need to have read any of the other books. If you do, it helps, but by no means does it really help you in getting the flavor of the book. The book is for a first-time reader of his series, and I'm sure when it was written, not, the primary reason, I'm sure that he had the story he wanted to tell, but part of it was these are new characters that aren't tied to other characters. It's a new entry point, and I'm sure his publisher is thinking, this entry point, I'm going to, a new reader will read it and say, I love this so much. Now let me go buy the other 9 books.
Right.
And so I read a lot of books for analytical reasons as well as pleasure, and, do a little self-reflection and figure out what's going on there. But like the last handful of books that I've read have all been technical manuals. Like I just downloaded, one of the speakers at this conference, his name is Brian Meeks, and he is the master of Amazon marketing ads. And this book is literally 200 plus pages of complex math equations. And that's my next 2 weeks getting through that book. And
oh, that would kill me because my math is rusty. It's been a while since I've studied it.
I'm okay at math, but he gave an hour-long presentation, and at the end of it, I realized I might have to go back and get a math degree. It was so complicated. And he dumbed it down for us, and I still was kind of struggling to stay with them. But that's the type of stuff that I wind up reading. So, I feel guilty that I don't read more. I buy books like I'm reading them all the time, but I have, just like you, 18 million other projects that there's only so many hours in the day.
Yeah. And it's weird for me, like thinking living in Maine, I would read more during the winter because I'm inside. It's just the exact opposite. I read more when the weather's better.
Well, and, I feel like there's a certain, when the weather gets nice, it's almost kind of this calming, like, I feel feel like during the winter you're more in survival mode than you are anything else.
Right. Oh yeah, yeah. You're just trying to. It's miserable, and the days are short. There's no sunshine, especially here in the Northeast. You have a very brief window to do stuff. It's just, yeah, I don't know. It's weird. It always kind of used to be the opposite for me. Like I read more during the, winter and the crappy weather months and less in the summer, but now it's usually just the opposite. Like once the good weather hits, I'll start reading, at least maybe a book a month, which is good for me as far as like actually being able to find the time to do it.
That's speed reading for me.
Well, this is the thing. If I like a book, I do kind of speed read. Like I can polish off a 250-page book in 5 or 6 hours if I have the time to sit down. I mean, that may not be speed reading to some people, but I think that's that's a pretty good clip in retaining what's going on. So sometimes, like on a Sunday afternoon, say, or something, if I have a day off from work and it's nice, then I'll go sit out on my porch and read, half of a book in one shot or something. In a couple days, I'll have the book done. And then I might not read anything else for 2 or 3 weeks, but I do have a tendency to. But I don't know if you're the same way, but when I get into series that I really like, I have a tendency of just plowing right through the series in a very short time.
Oh, well, I think that's part of, it's the Netflix culture for reading as well. I'm a huge fan of, I was a huge fan. I still read it, but the Laurel K. Hamilton's Anita Blake series is 23 books long, and when I started reading that, I just went from 1 to 10 in, probably 2 weeks. And then, if you see my Netflix viewing habits, we've turned into a binge culture. And I think that goes for reading. And I think you see this when it comes to things like, the saying is, if you're writing a series, no one wants to buy your book 1. No one wants to buy your book 2, but when you hit book 3, all of a sudden there's this magic. Now there's enough content for me to spend time on. I think the one-off books for a large volume of readers is a turnoff. They want long series, so when they fall in love with a character, you stay with them the whole time.
Right.
And I think that's just become the new standard.
So, like my big issue is I am terrible at, keeping like a series of characters going, especially if I go a long period of time without working with those characters, because I feel like I kind of lose the voice of that character if I'm apart from them from a long period of time, if that makes any sense, So it's like if I was going to write a series, I think I would have to almost sit down and do the whole series in one shot and then break it up and go, and then maybe just edit and work on it that way, because I think that's the only way I could do it and have it remain consistent.
So the new trend in, it's not new, it's been around for a couple of years now, but, one of the major trends in writing is you don't release your book 1 until you have book 3 ready to go. And then what you do is you release them every 2 weeks, 3 weeks maybe. And you're constantly feeding the machine new content until the story is over. And I think, I personally don't want to do that with my novels. There is, from a continuity standpoint, and that's why I'm finishing book 3 and I'm going straight into book 4 for the current series, because when I took that 6-month break, I forgot a lot of stuff and I had to reread it. But reading it and absorbing the characters that way, I think, is very different than writing it and absorbing the characters that way. And so,
well, because most of the time when we're writing and you're writing your novel, then you're going back and editing your novel, then you're going back and editing. So you spend so much time with those characters in each process that you really, by the time you've done your second, third, fourth edit or whatever, you know those characters inside and out. You know their nuances. You know how their tone of voice is. There's all those things. So when you go away from them from a long period of time, I just think you don't retain all that as well. So it always feels a little different. Maybe once you get back into writing them, it kind of comes back. But for me, it just always feels awkward. Like I tried to write a sequel to The Returners, which was my first book, and I can't I haven't been able to do it because I don't feel it has the same feel and tone.
And I have read books where, Neil Stevenson wrote, Diamond something. I'm never going to remember the name. And the first part of the book, is this very slow pace, very discovery oriented. It's a great book, and it's really, like, it's very rich. And then literally from one page to the next page, it's like you're reading a separate book. And I reread it just to see if maybe I fell asleep and forgot something. But it truly feels like he wrote the book at two different periods. And I if I ever got to bump into him, I really just want to ask him, like, did you write that book at, start in January, took a break, and then started up in June again? Like, he didn't lose the character, but there was such a shift in voice that it was almost like maybe there was a middle project that, like, influenced him, because his other books are incredibly tight. Like, that character does not make any shift beginning, middle, and end. Like, everything is so rich for that character. And I definitely had that, and I had to reread my books. But again, I just don't feel like when I started writing, it was probably 6-7 months between Night Shadows and Night Legions. And, when I started writing it, I was writing it, it was going along. I wound up trashing 30,000 words because it took me 30,000 words to, discover these people again. And I realized, like, I had just kind of butchered them for a while. So
you have the 3 books, and you kind of try to find your voice again after, like you were saying, being gone for a while, having to trash like 30,000 words
that's a lot
and all
of
that.
You can't afford.
But you also wrote Morning Sun, which is a prequel to those books too, correct?
Yeah. So the way I made life a little confusing, and if I was to redo it, I might change some stuff. But so, books 1 and 2 of my superhero series are with my publisher, and they've done a great job, and I've got no fault with them whatsoever. But I personally just have kind of outgrown them. And so I wanted to control an entry point into my series so I could do sales, I could print at lower costs. Like, I got to make decisions that a publisher won't let me make, because they want to make money. And so, I wrote Morning Sun, but I didn't want to write a prequel, like a true prequel, because I actually have a prequel series that I plan on releasing featuring one of the characters who really isn't in the book. And so Morning Sun is actually a collection of short stories about key moments in 13 people's lives before Nighthawks takes place. And they're all, 3,000 to 5,000 words. But it gave me a chance to focus in on some of the characters who don't get a lot of screen time. And that was kind of fun in a way that,
right.
Yeah, it was just a really different take on it. The downside is not everyone likes the short story. They want the long series. So I've gotten some mixed reviews on it, but overall it's been doing really well. And I've gotten a lot more, data about actual book selling because of it that my publisher would never give me that kind of data. And now with Night Legions, which is coming out soon, that's going to be self-published as well through my own publishing house, because I can afford to do the work myself. I know what I'm doing. I know who I need to hire for my editing.
Right.
I don't need hand-holding anymore. And at the end of the day, I want the paycheck that comes with it. So having a publisher in the middle of that just makes my life difficult, and I need to get rid of difficult things. So I'm going to wrap up the series with the publisher, and it'll go great. And, when it's time for my rights to revert back, I'm going to ask for them back, and then I'm going to re-release the books, new covers and, new edits and all that stuff. So it's a chance to revitalize a series. But in the meantime, I'll be writing a prequel series that I plan to release all three books in 1 year.
We didn't mention this, but I just thought probably
the year after.
To bring it up. This is the Children of Nostradamus series that we're talking about.
Crazy.
So if you're interested in checking it out,
and so
that's the series we are discussing right now. Hey, that's all right. It happens.
Yeah, you would think I would be way better at pitching my own stuff, and but at this conference that I went to, this very prolific and very well-known indie writer, Chris Fox, got up and he talked about writing your flagship series, and what he meant by that was create a world in which you can spend a significant amount of time exploring and expanding. It'll have multiple entry points. It'll have, different tales, different times, different situations, even different genres all in one world. And that way it invites more and more readers into a world and not just a series. And so I've actually been doing that this whole time. There's already, the prequel series, it's going to be 3 books. There's at least a duology that I want to have take place in Canada. And that's all, all my books right now have been very U.S. centric and not shown the ramifications across the globe, but there are really large ramifications. So I may write about characters that are in, foreign countries, and,
because everything can kill you.
I'm looking forward to it. I would like to. A large contingency of my readers are from Australia. I'd like to go visit Australia and write a book there.
Everything. But Australia is an awesome country. I would love to go visit Australia myself. So
kangaroos, deadly.
That and New Zealand are like my bucket list places to go. Well, that's where my family is originally from. So is New Zealand. Yeah, like my lineage goes back.
I just want to go to New Zealand so I can see hobbit houses.
My lineage started in New Zealand. Yeah, so that's one of those things.
Really?
Before I die, I want to go do. So.
Well, in that case, now you got to do it. So yeah, I'm looking forward to staying in the world for a while. I have, side hustles that I'm working on and other projects that are happening, but, this one, this arc is about to finish. And what I realize is this arc is it's the catalyst that's going to change a very large, significant part of the world. So, in my books, Canada is the superpower and the most technologically advanced country in the world. for a lot of reasons. And the U.S. is nothing but a war zone. And
that's right.
And so
Marketing,
there's a lot to play with and a lot to expand
that way
on.
You expand.
It's just like actual comic books, like the X-Men universe. Like, why have one X-Men team when you can have 8 of them? And that's kind of, I plan on doing that for a while. I hear, I was sitting at a table with an indie author who, most of her book series are like 9-10 books.
I have a friend of mine that writes
I'm
Westerns.
like, wow, that's a lot. She's a $1 million author. So
right now in his Western series, but they're very popular.
That's what people are interested in. So let's make it happen.
Gray and Louis L'Amour. I mean, on Amazon, if you look at his books, they're always in like the top 5 pretty much all the time. Very consistent reader base. So,
woo. I hear about, and granted they're shorter, they're novellas, but I just listened to a podcast where the author is releasing a book, a novella every 13 days. They've gotten their craft to such an efficient
for me, that's
business
like
level.
a 6-month writing
every
process.
13 days.
I just, especially now, my writing is notoriously.
Yeah, I mean they're not long. They're meant to be kind of pulpy novellas.
For me. Not with editing and everything else.
I don't even know what that would look like. Like, even if I quit my day job, like,
maybe like over a course of a couple of years, written a pile of these and then have them just all ready to go, type deal.
Yeah, so I'm hoping for
that's a pretty good goal though, because most authors, I mean, we run in those circles where a lot of the authors we know only release a book every year or two, that which there's nothing wrong with it, especially a lot of them write very quality content too, so. Oh, exactly.
Yeah, I wish I could
so
set
tell
my
me
game
about the
up,
writers' conference you went to.
This whole day job thing just kind of gets in the way of writing. So I listened to this podcast. It is the Sell More Book Show, and it's done by Brian Cohen and Jim Kukral. And they've been doing it for 3 years without missing a single episode, which it's terrifying to me. And it was put on along with 2 authors, Zach Bohannon and Jay Thorne, and they decided to make this conference, and it's called the Sell More Book Show, and the conference was the Sell More Book Show Summit, and it was 110-ish authors. We all met up in Chicago, and Saturday was 14 hours of conferencing. Some of it was networking, some of it was looking at statistics and growing trends and failing business models, and it was very much a conference dedicated to writers as entrepreneurs and writers as businesses. And this was you probably saw my post in the Facebook group. One of the things that drives me absolutely batshit crazy is the author who says, I can't write because I can't find my muse. And I call BS so hard that their head should spin. Because and with these people, what I'm discovering is, and I'm just to blame as everyone else, it's a business. And it would be like a doctor saying, no surgery today. I'm just not in the mood. That's not how that works. So it was being looked at from a business perspective. And so, there were $1 million authors there who make $1 million a year. And they were talking about things that make them successful, talking about community building, brand recognition, collaboration and expansion. So there was a lot of fantastic information, and I've gone to a lot of writing conferences, and I love them. You learn a little bit about craft, you learn a little bit about marketing. This made no apologies. If you didn't understand what they were talking about, it's because you didn't do your homework. They came up with charts, statistics, looking at numbers from thousands of authors, studying the author earning reports, learning what's a growing trend, what's a failing trend, it was so intense that for the first time at a writing conference, I felt that I was behind the curve.
That's pretty much about where I'm at.
And I really
like
that feeling
I consider
because
myself
it shows me how much more I can still do.
I personally,
and not dissing
don't
hobby
feel
writers
like
whatsoever. I can
that maybe I have the skill set to be a Stephen King or whatever, nor do I have the desire or time to sit down and write 8 books a year. It's more of a when I feel like doing it type thing. And if something really strikes me that I want to write, then I'll write it type thing and put it out. But I just, from the fact I've been doing it, I look at it this way because I go, and this is something I bring up so often, being in bands and playing out, I don't know if it soured me on my whole attitude of if I'm not going to be successful at it, I'm not going to be successful at it. If I was going to be successful at it, I would have had some measure of success already type attitude that I kind of have, I guess. I know that probably sounds really negative and bad, but I look at the problem with me, I think, in a lot of other people, a lot of other writers and such, is I think they look at everything very black and white. I'm not being successful. So, or what a lot of people would consider successful. Everybody has a different definition of success, I guess. But as far as like sale numbers and stuff go, I just don't feel that it's going to be profitable enough for me to put exorbitant amount of time into it, to just like, and for example, I mean, and I'll admit it on the show, my last book I spent 7 or 8 months working on. Online, I've maybe sold 10 copies of it. I've sold plenty at book shows and stuff, and I thought it was probably the best thing I've ever put out. So that stuff like there really kind of killed it killed my motivation, I guess, is a good way to put it.
So, and this is where I think a lot of authors struggle with, and I did too. And this is the reason that I go into this the way I do is my background is in communications and marketing. So I have an art degree, but I knew I was never going to be a successful artist. It's not my passion, nor do I care. But I knew I could do graphic design because I have mad ass marketing skills and I know how to hustle. So I bring that to the table, with my marketing. And so, you know, I had to make some decisions very early on that probably, screwed me over. So like, there's no romance in my first superhero book. I didn't want it. I don't care. Like, I really just don't care. And I have fans who have sent me things saying, well, if these two characters aren't going to get together, then I'm not going to keep reading. And I'm just like, well, then don't read.
Yeah.
And I could have very easily pandered and not spent an uncanny amount of time developing this relationship, but they wanted the urban fantasy style thing. And that's just not my cup of tea. And I'm not knocking those who do it, because those who do it have learned the system that makes them successful. But I find that a lot of authors walking into it have, and this is, I'm going to sound like a douche no matter how I say it, have that, the Angela Lansbury approach, where you're going to write it, your publisher is going to go print it, and you're going to go solve crime. And, which, by the way, Murder, She Wrote, shout out to Maine. And what E.J. Stevens is, kind of a local legend about her hustle ability. And she says outright that she spends 80% of her time marketing and 20% of her time writing. And if you're not willing to do that, that venue, that pathway of self-success gets shut down. And not saying that that's going to end any potential, because, a publisher could pick you up and they could do all of that work for you. But I am one of those people who likes to hedge my bets as much as possible in my favor. And I'm willing to settle for modicum success versus, gamble and not have any success. And so that's why, I'm glad I went with my publisher when I did, but now I've outgrown it, and I'm seeing where I have room for growth that they don't. Not one bit of this relates to writing. The Lindsay Broker at the conference said something that I think is extremely accurate. You need to be good at least one thing. You can be good at writing and be crappy at marketing, or you can be at writing and be great at marketing, but you can't be at writing and marketing. And you see that success with, 50 Shades of Grey. First person who calls that a literary masterpiece, I'm going to slap upside the face. And even, I'm a big fan of David Wellington, who originally, he published all his novels on his blog, one chapter at a time. And some of them weren't great. But he knew what he was doing when he was starting his marketing, and his stories do get really good. I highly suggest them. If you're a practical zombie fan, he does a really good job in his first book. I loved it. And I think that that's where authors, not all the time and not to a certain degree, but they write the end at the end of their novel, and then what happens next. Right. And I've been marketing Night Legions, and I'll be the first one to say, my betas know this. I haven't finished writing it. The pre-order has been going on for 5 days, 4 days already, and I'm not even done with the book. Because my marketing is so much more important than finishing the book right now. I'll get to it. So I think that is the catch-22. And some authors don't want to be a marketer, and I can't knock them for that. It's a whole different business model. And I think that as long as people are being realistic, the ones that drive me nuts are the people who write the end at the end of their book, don't do anything.
I mean,
don't go to cons.
For me,
don't reach out to other people. And then they want to know why they're not an Amazon bestseller.
If this makes sense.
Well, let me give you the 100.
I'm a pretty good salesman because I do very
bestseller.
well at shows as far as like getting people interested in buying. I have never been able to figure out how to translate that over to the digital marketing world because I feel like that is a completely different beast altogether.
Okay, so here's my cheat homework for you. You need to find 10 other authors that you're friends with, and you need to let them know, hey, I need a bump in my sales. Can your next newsletter feature my book? And in return, I'll host you on my podcast. And
yes,
if each one of them
I saw that very much with the returners
book,
when it first came out.
That was one email that got you that sale. That bumps your rankings up. That was my first
book, and it's still my most successful.
And it starts the cascade effect. And the cascade effect is very short. It won't last long.
1,000 some odd copies.
And then you do it again.
But it was very much that effect where that initial rush of people buying it made other people buy it because it bumped it up in the statistics so high. Wow.
Exactly. So I'm literally refreshing the pages right now. As of today, I went from being in 1,000 rank on the superhero category to 152. And my sale sale hasn't even started. Awesome. I'm preparing for my sale. Tomorrow, my rank, if all goes according to plan, and so help me God, I'm going to scream if it doesn't.
Top 50
I should hit number one in my category.
But I've been number one.
If I hit number one in my category, or even if I hit top 3, and I've hit top 3 multiple times, I've never gotten 1.
It's usually with short stories where I get way up in the rankings.
I even get in the free category. I don't do very well.
Take a chance.
People would rather pay for my book than take it for free
because they haven't read my stuff or whatever. I'm actually doing a sale right now through May 12th. So when you hear this podcast on Thursday, I have 4 or 5 of my short stories up for free for Kindle. So if you're hearing this podcast and you've been interested in checking my stuff out, and you don't have Amazon Prime or Kindle Select, you can check those stories out by going to Amazon.com/author/Thomas Washburn Jr. or just type in Thomas Washburn Jr. in the search, and you can find that stuff for free to check out. And then if you do like it, please buy something, because that would be pretty awesome.
So your homework is to reach out to those 10 authors and ask them to share out your information. And what you do is those 10 people, later on you say, hey, thanks.
I don't want to seem
like
a
come on the podcast.
Really, I don't want to be that person.
Once you start getting that, and I think authors are always terrified, and this was something that got said multiple times at the conference, are terrified of asking for favors.
Type, that's how I feel about things. I do it because I enjoy doing it.
Well, and it's not, and you need to look at it as not necessarily a favor. Right. When you connect with this author who writes similar something to you and they pitch it out to their fans, they're offering their fans an opportunity to read something else similar to theirs. And really what you're doing is essentially you're helping them because, we can only create so much content. So if I don't have a book that's coming out,
I see that.
I send out to my
I see that a
my
lot
fans
with the
and I
podcast
say,
community.
hey,
honestly,
I don't have a
since
book coming out
I've
soon,
been
but I
doing
just
this,
read
like
this awesome book by this
didn't
author.
have
I
a
think you
review
guys
cast
would
up
love.
this Monday, which
And that author
so
gets.
I made sure that I put up on my page that, hey, everybody, there's no review cast on Monday like normal. But if you're looking for content, go check out the Movie Freaks podcast or the Potato League podcast, which are two, great podcasts that I listen to, and I happen to be friends with the people who do them. But they're great podcasts, so I try to do that, and I've seen them do the same thing. It's very, it's.
And so you just gave them a shout out. Be like, hey, check it out. You guys got some recognition. Would you mind dropping on this particular episode that, your viewers might like? And that's, you've got to be bold and be comfortable asking for favors. And you have to not think of it solely as self-serving. If you do feel it's solely self-serving, then maybe it is. But, for instance, something, people are always terrified to ask fans for favors. One of the things that you can do is, if you're listening to, Not Your Average Joe podcast right now, what you need to do is take a moment and say some thanks for this awesome content that's being made. And you need to hop over to iTunes and leave a review. And because I'm going to make, TJ do this, if you leave a review between and next episode, he'll give you a shout out on the next podcast.
Yeah.
So leave a review. Tell them what you like. Tell them what you don't like. Give them some feedback.
That's a great idea. But the
unfortunate
part about that is this podcast is on
about 100 different sites.
You're just building that community. Like one, so I have no idea if people leave reviews.
I'm actually.
So if you do leave a review, hit the Facebook page up or my Instagram, which you will, and leave me a comment letting me know which one and maybe a link so I can check it out so I know you did.
Yeah. And that's one of the best parts about it is you, and it's difficult because you got to find nifty ways to get community involvement because no man is an island. And I think I walked into the writing, I released my first book and it got like eight sales. Like I was a rock star. I thought I was awesome. And now I'm like, oh, eight sales? Like, what was that about? And so now I have super fans, like crazy super fans who are awesome. I'm stalking them right now. Like I have, Jacob Polanco, Ken McWilliams, Susan, Chang, sorry, I just butchered her name, and Sonia McClung are beta reading for me because they're awesome and I love talking to them. I know, I know more about them than my average fan. And, I hope that I'm going to send them books and I'm going to send them more books and, I send Christmas cards. Well, and it started out with, I didn't have any. And then I got this one fan, her name's, and I got to give a major shout out to Minaz. And the reason that my book went live, for pre-order on, May 4th was to make sure that it was ready for her birthday, which was the next day. And she has been one of those people who's, shouted from the rooftops and, I see every time she likes something and, we have very much a writer, fan relationship, but she's an awesome fan.
This is where the Patreon site stuff comes in handy. No, I'm just kidding.
I will keep doing that until there's too many fans, and then I'll just make a super elite fan group. Well, and that's what. Well, and there's I don't know if it was Michael Anderle. I might be getting people wrong on this.
I think our
wrote a book
moms are
about
often
1,000 true fans.
our
All you need to
first
do to be
fans
successful
because
is have
they're usually the
1,000
first
true
ones that really
fans.
support us.
And when I
And our
started, I
dads
had
are
my
usually
mom.
the voice of reason.
Great shout out, but
have a backup plan.
It doesn't count. Now, yeah, and I had to tell my mom to stop liking all my stuff on Facebook. Like, Mom, you're messing up the algorithm. Stop doing that. But now, I don't have a lot of super fans by any, but I do have a handful that, I know them by name, and I know that they're going to run out and buy my book right away. And I care about their opinions. And so I think that, I'm in this now 4 years, and I have a handful, not a big number,
it's a very
but, double digits.
Natural thing for them because they enjoy what you do.
More, and
they want to get it out to other people, so other people.
I don't even have to ask them for help. They're just awesome. And exactly. And some of them have been inviting their friends, and I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm comfortable with that. Well, let me just tell you, one of the friends is a diehard super fan now, sends me emails and gives me feedback and awesome feedback. And that took a while. And I'm 3-4 years into this, and I'm just starting to see that community is being built. And, when there's a million other authors out there for you to choose from, the fact that I even have this small handful, wow, that's a big deal. Back in the day when R.A. Salvatore was the only name in fantasy making big books, he had a much smaller, much bigger pot to pull fans from. And so we're striving for that. And, it starts with a handful. And so I think as long as you feel that you are providing them with something, you never should be scared of asking, especially if, hey, I'll give you a shout out on the podcast, or, I don't want to give it away, but I am, doing something for my beta readers coming up. And so, the reciprocal, the community aspect, as long as you maintain that, I think it's comfortable to ask for some really weird favors. You have to be comfortable with them saying no.
Yeah,
but
I can get
more often than not, I get yeses.
It's one of those things.
That took me years to learn that lesson.
I'm taking advantage of
and I'm
my
still
fans
scared to do it most of the time.
I'm asking to do stuff if that really comes out right, I guess, that way, or people that enjoy what I do. I always feel like I shouldn't ask for favors because they're already fans. You know what I mean? It's yeah. Oh, for sure.
Your fans should leave you reviews because giving you good reviews keeps you writing. Your fans should shout from the rooftops how much they love you because it keeps you writing. That's the relationship that's happening. You want to keep giving to them. They want to keep you going. And I think once you find that, don't get me wrong, I'm still nervous every time I ask them, hey guys, can you share something for me? Yeah. But now, one of them just gave me an 8-page critique on one of my books that, oh my God, it's intense and I need to work on it. But it's awesome that I didn't even ask for that, and it's happening. And so I think, you have to keep your expectations reasonable, but asking your fans to go leave a review, or to hit you up, or, to connect with other authors, to, hey, it's the same thing. The moment you go post this podcast online, I'm going to go share it.
You're pulling back the curtain a little bit.
It does something for me, and it does something for my fans, because now my fans get to hear this conversation that we're having about the writing world, and they're curious about it, and I'm going to share it with other writers. Exactly. And so I don't get me wrong, like there's that whole whoring and self-promoing that we all know that person who does it too much, and I probably am that person. But it's what you have to do, and as long as I think you keep it in a moderation situation, I think it's perfectly fine. I think many authors do this, and this is where like collaborative projects eventually start. And I think it's something you have to get comfortable with.
But yeah, no, I very much agree.
I don't know a lot of authors
we are
who
going to
ever
have to
really
wrap
truly
things
get
up because
comfortable
we're
with it.
already, we've already killed that hour and some odd minutes
I do think
of
it
time,
needs to get done.
and it goes by quick. So, well, what I was going to say, can you let everybody know, where to find your stuff and anything else you want to say before we wrap it up?
So probably the easiest way to find everything I do is go straight to my website. It's remyflagg.com, remyflagg.com. All my books are on there. You can sign up for any social media, my newsletter. You can shoot me emails. I respond. I'm a real human. I like to talk to people. It's a crazy concept, I know. And for the folks out there listening, we're going to put TJ's feet to the fire, and he has to reach out to 10 authors. I'm giving him homework. I'm not letting up on this. I'm relentless. He has to reach out to 10 authors and have 10 people
that
help
might be a whole
promote
episode
one of his
in
projects.
itself.
And he is going to give shout outs to every fan who
it's contacts be like
him
a really
to say they listen.
Rap of
just every one of them.
We'll just put a beat in the background and I'll start spitting out names.
There's going to be a whole episode of you just reading
fire.
people's names.
As the kids would say, it's going to be fire.
I would listen to that.
Lit. Okay, you are definitely around. Well, I guess I am too, but I try not to pay attention to the new slang and logo. I probably should as a writer. So
no, it's gonna get
all my
lit.
Younger kids don't sound like. That's why I said all my stuff in the 80s and 90s. And I work in a college, so yeah.
Well, that's the only reason I know any of this is because of being a teacher. I hear it all day long.
Before we go, I had
a student
call me sir
today, and they just looked at me, and the look said, "You're too old to ask this question."
That's never bothered me, but for some reason, for the fact I'm turning 40 this year, that bothered me. So on that note, thank you for coming on. We'll definitely do it again. It's always fun, and it's always informative, and we can chat for hours. Make sure you go check out the Children of Nostradamus series. Very awesome. Suburban Zombie High is also fantastic. I absolutely love that series. And you can get all those books by going to remyflagg.com. And I want to leave you all with this one word of advice. Remember, kids, opinions are like assholes. Everybody's got one, and I will see you sexy animals on the flip side.
It's intermission. Rise and stretch time. Time to refresh yourself and visit our snack bar. Got a yen for hot popcorn? Your favorite soft drinks are sparkling cold. The juicy Frank sizzling hot. There's delicious coffee, freshly brewed, and all kinds of ice cream and candy to tempt you. Showtime will be announced loud and clear to get you back to your car in time. So stretch your legs. Come to the snack bar now.